Good evening, cult members, and welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
And welcome to our spoiler reaction to Falcon the Winter Soldier, Episode 2, called The Star-Spangled Man with a Plan. Okay, there's a lot in this episode. But what I want to start with was... I didn't feel this in WandaVision. I very much feel that this was supposed to be one movie. Like they wrote a movie and they went, wait, let's do it on Disney Plus. So let's make it 6 episodes. So let's add a couple extra shots to string it out. And it doesn't have that same kind of
week to week
feel. It feels very much like it should be all binged in one sitting.
And they said that it was going to be more like a movie, like 6 installments in a movie.
Yes.
So whether they filmed it that way originally or filmed it as a movie and then broke it up, I don't know.
I'm not saying I'm upset with it. I'm not
right.
It just we got very used to the WandaVision episode of the week kind of version, and this is very much one continuous. This feels like Stranger Things. If Stranger Things was a week-to-week thing and not just here's all 9 episodes.
Everything all at once.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's definitely, once it's all up, you're going to want to binge it all together. I mean, I still like the week-to-week thing, especially right now when there's not a whole lot to look forward to.
Right.
So the week-to-week thing is fine, but I think that you might get more out of it once we can binge the whole thing all together.
Sit down with all of it together and stuff like that. This episode starts with the discussion of John Walker and his legitimacy of being the new Captain America.
Right. So you didn't really get a whole lot of him in the last episode.
You got the introduction in the last one.
Introduced him. I still think he's got a punchable face. But yeah, they showed him in the locker room of his high school, and he's got the suit, and his best buddy from high school is there with him, and his girlfriend, supposedly maybe from high school, is there with him, and they're all kind of, egging him on, and like you said, it kind of makes him more human.
It humanizes him, yeah.
So you're not like he's just a drone, but then he walks out on the field and it's here is the product, Captain America.
Yes. And I'm wondering if some point in the future we get him kind of calling bull on that. He's very much the company man. He's being very much the I have orders to be Captain America. I'm going to be Captain America. But
he's still new, right? I think Steve was like that a lot in the beginning, too. Hence the Star-Spangled Man with a Plan, right? They played that song when he was out on the stage and selling bonds for the government. And then, once he got to Germany, was that where he was?
Yeah.
And he started kind of seeing what was
What's
going
really
on,
going on,
and that Bucky was possibly captured, and then he wasn't so much the party line guy anymore.
And that starts him down the line of choosing to do things because it's the right thing to do and not waiting for a committee to come along and tell him what he can and can't do, which is actually referenced later on when there's we'll get into the other scene that leads to this one in a second, but they're pretty much getting Bucky out of jail because he missed a therapy session, and it's like, not going for your parole hearing kind of thing, your parole meeting. But once they get him out and they have this conversation out in the street that the new Cap, John Walker, the new Cap, wants Falcon and Bucky's help.
Right.
They're better. They're stronger together than they are apart, is what he keeps saying. But Sam directly says, you have overseers. You have a committee that you have to go to. We're more freelancers and we can do our own thing, which is totally something that Steve would have said and done.
Right. Well, and after, again, they mentioned this too, after being on the run for 2 years after Civil War, Steve and Sam and Natasha, everybody that was kind of off on the run, they are very disenchanted with
the system.
The system,
yes, very much so, very, very much so. But it was nice to get a proper introduction with John Walker, specifically him as Captain America. We get Bucky going right to Sam and saying, "Why'd you give up the shield?" and stuff like that.
Right.
And Sam's like, "We can't worry about this right now. There's the Flag Smashers. They're doing stuff. We've tracked them to Germany, and they have an argument, and then Bucky gets on the plane and they fly to Germany.
Right.
And the scene of from the trailer where we need a plan. What's the plan? And Sam jumps out the plane.
Yeah.
That was really cool. But we've seen it. The extension of that scene was like, where's the chute?
Right.
And they're like, we're only at 200 feet. You can't even use a chute. And he's like, well, I don't. And Bucky says, I don't need one. And jumps out.
I have an arm.
I have an arm. I have a
and I'm
vibranium
like,
arm.
What's he gonna do with his arm? How's that gonna break his fall?
Try to slow him down at least or whatever. But he lands and he's like, that was stupid. But he's okay. And then Red Wing flies over and you can hear Bucky in his ear say, I got all that on video.
Sam.
Oh, Sam
in his ear. Yeah.
Sam, I got that all on video. It's like, get out of my face. We get a proper introduction with the Flag Smashers.
And Infus Ness.
We've been waiting for Aaron Kellyman. I've been waiting for Aaron Kellyman to really properly show up in the show. She was in the first episode, but she was masked. You really couldn't see her.
Right.
But she's kind of the leader, de facto leader of the Flag Smashers.
Right.
And they stole medical supplies or whatever it is. They get away, but Sam and Bucky are there, and so they have the big fight that we see in the trailer
on the
trucks,
semis,
whatever. Yeah. Really fun, really cool. The show is definitely much more of a action set piece in each episode so far.
Right.
With the conversation, but then John Walker as Cap and his black sidekick. I'm just gonna say it that way because we're going to get into that in a minute, but show up and help in the fight with the against the Flag Smashers.
Yeah.
And all of the Flag Smashers are enhanced. They're super soldiers.
Obviously, yeah.
And John Walker is able to at least keep up, even if he's not. They kind of, in his introduction, talk about he's an amazing soldier and physically capable.
I mean, is he enhanced?
Yeah.
Because he definitely has superhuman abilities.
Yeah.
So are mutants being?
I don't.
Because he chucks that shield way
just
far
like
away,
Steve did.
and Steve was enhanced. So where did that come from?
I like that they lost that fight.
Yeah.
The four of them, Sam, Bucky, John Walker's Lamar Hoskins as Battlestar. Terrible name. Iron Patriot, same thing.
Yeah.
They lose that fight. They get the Flag Smashers get away. They get to some safe house, and they are called Robin Hood. They're the locals consider them Robin Hood for stealing the medication and trying to help people or whatever it is.
Right.
And we kind of get a little bit of an introduction with them too about the concept of they actually say we need to show everybody that that everybody who came back is getting all the talk and getting all the help and everything. What about those of us who stayed?
Right.
And so that's very much a good motivation to point out. Very simple motivation, very simple way to expound it too. But they were able to kind of, say, hey, this is why we're here.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of a cool, although in that thing, what is her name? Carly, Aaron Kellyman's character. She gets a text from somebody saying, you stole from me. Now I'm going to kill you, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
and they called him the power broker.
Yes. Yeah. And he showed up as they were trying to get away, and one of their people goes out and kind of slows them down so they can't catch them before they get on the plane and get out. And he is in, like military grade.
That guy, I don't think that's the actual power broker. He was on the phone with somebody saying they got away.
Okay.
So I think he's like the, the right-hand man. Or
right.
The herald.
But they obviously know or have access to heavy-duty equipment. So,
right.
I mean, like drug dealers or military or something.
Yes. There is definitely some big bad somewhere that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
Now, we get a mention of Zemo, which we'll talk about in a minute at the end. So I don't think it's him that we're worried about.
Right. Because he's still in prison.
Jail, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, there's somebody else that is not known, at least to us. Now, again, we've talked about this in the past with WandaVision. We're not coming from it from the comic. We're learning as we go along with the comic and stuff like that.
Right.
We're only coming at it from what's being presented to us in the story and what we know of the MCU. So we don't know necessarily who that power broker could be.
Right.
So it could be all kinds of different people, and I'm very interested in kind of where. And I love the concept of who are we fighting? Androids.
The big three.
The big three.
Aliens, androids, or wizards.
Wizards, yes. Which was a fun, ongoing conversation. The show is actually funnier than you actually...
Yeah.
It's a serious show with like funny parts.
Yeah. I mean, it's, it's Sam and Bucky, and they were always kind of quippy. So you expect that kind of humor to go on.
But there's definitely some other big bad out there that we haven't been introduced to yet.
Yep.
Okay, let's talk about... Isaiah Bradley.
Yep.
Isaiah Bradley was the Black Captain America in the comics in the 60s and 70s. And he got introduced here as a super soldier like Steve, like Bucky, that was working for Captain America, was working for the United States, and was dropped in behind the lines during the Korean War to take out the Winter Soldier.
Yep.
And he was able to at least stop the Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
During that fight, but he was imprisoned and exiled for 30 years after the Korean War.
And tested,
which is everything that they talked about doing with Sam or with Steve.
Steve. Yep.
And they kind of did it with Bucky. Hydra did it with Bucky.
Hydra absolutely did it with Bucky.
Yeah.
But Steve was on ice, right? So all this, so we're kind of getting bits and pieces of that time between when Steve crashed and went on ice, and then when he was brought out, which was kind of around the first Avengers or a little before the first Avengers, right? When he was brought out.
Early 2000s kind of.
Yeah. So all that time in between, I mean, Bucky was around. So what was going on? And we're getting little bits and pieces of kind of what was going on.
Right. Bucky was, the head assassin for Hydra.
Right.
But
you've got this modified person who's a bad guy, so how does the good guys, how do they combat that? And they used all the serum or whatever on Steve, right? They didn't have the ability to create anybody else.
Yeah, that's something I think they're going to have to discuss at some point in time in this show, because Hydra definitely had a version of it. That's how we get the Winter Soldier and stuff like that, and the other Winter Soldiers that we get during Civil War that's discussed. And within the storyline that we have right now with the MCU, now we have Isaiah Bradley, who was enhanced.
Right.
But we also have the Flag Smashers, who are enhanced somehow.
Right.
And Banner was trying to make a version of the serum, and got exposed to gamma radiation and all that kind of stuff. So so there's continuously people out there trying to make what actually happened with Steve in other ways. But
the professor guy or whatever got killed
by the Hydra guy. Yeah.
So was it Stark or
somebody else? So specifically the conflict that happens between Isaiah and Bucky in the house, and Sam doesn't know about Isaiah at all.
Yeah.
And I from the conversation they had when they walked out, Steve didn't know about him either.
Yeah.
But specifically him as a black man talking about being in prison for being different and all that stuff was really heavy.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that they're approaching it this way, because they did it in the first episode. It's not wave it in your face, although the next scene is wave it in your face. But there's a wave it. They're not waving it in your face. We're having the discussion of being black in America.
Yeah.
That's like the first show. The WandaVision show was about grief. Yeah. This is about being black in America.
Yeah, because the last episode was too.
Yeah, and that's really heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And a fun comic book books show. Just like the comics. They go outside and they are arguing about Isaiah and how Sam didn't know, and did Steve know, and Bucky's saying that he shouldn't have, he felt like it didn't need to know. They're arguing, and the police show up and they start going after Sam because Sam is black, arguing with a white man.
Right.
And one of the cops finally says, "Oh, it's Sam Wilson."
Right, and they're like, he's asking him for his ID, and then and he's like, "I don't have to give you my ID," and very a story. I don't want to say a story, but a scene that plays out and has played out constantly
in this country, which is, I'm gonna curse, fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
They are having a discussion. It is heated, and it's obviously a discussion. They're not yelling at each other. There's no weapons pulled. And who's the person who's getting harassed? Right.
And why do you have to present ID? Like, maybe you just walked out of your house. You don't, you have to.
You taking the trash out. Do I need to take my ID with me? Kind of like, that kind of thing. Makes
me very angry.
Right.
But, now they flipped. Oh, oh, you're Sam. Oh,
yeah.
And then the white guy is the guy that ends up getting
back to the conversation about
arrested.
Which I thought, and I appreciate that of all the people that were all the officers and Sam and Bucky and everybody who's there. I mean, Bucky's the most badass of the whole group,
right?
And he very quietly goes along.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't fight or anything. The therapy is helping. It seems like it's not helping, but it's helping. Let's talk about the therapy session at the jail.
Yeah.
John Walker gets Bucky out of jail.
Right. And now we're buds.
Now we're buddies. No. Part of the agreement is that they have a session with the doctor right then with Sam, and in that conversation they have the fun staring contest.
Yeah. And
they kind of bicker back and forth. But while Sam and Bucky are looking at each other, Bucky finally says, "Why did you give up the shield? If you gave Steve gave you that shield for a reason, and you gave it up, that means Steve was wrong about you, and if he's wrong about you, he's wrong about me."
Right.
Which is part of Bucky's trying to come to terms with himself.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's heavy too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And I kind of felt like, he really let something out there, and Sam was just like,
yada yada.
Huh?
Yada yada.
Yeah, he was just kind of blew him off, and let's go, and then we don't ever have to do anything together again. And I'm like, Bucky's reaching out here, and
yes.
you just kind of blew him off.
Yes. This is to add on to the previous episode with Sam about trying to refix the boat and helping his sister out.
He is also in his head.
He's in his own head, and he hasn't come to terms with anything yet, which is, I think, part of the reason why he gave the shield up. It was that he hasn't dealt with everything that's happened yet.
Yeah.
And Bucky is on the process. Bucky has a lot more to deal with.
Yeah.
But Bucky's at least on the road.
Yeah.
Sam isn't even on the on-ramp yet.
Right.
Like, he's not even in the car yet.
Yeah.
To try to figure out where he's at mentally.
Yeah.
And so when he yada yadas what Bucky says, that was rough.
Yeah.
Like that scene for me was harder than the Isaiah Bradley thing. Scene about him talking about being tortured and everything.
Yeah.
And mostly because if it hits home for me.
Yeah.
I'm very much somebody who's very open about how I feel and my emotions and where I am mentally and whatever that stuff. And so when I tell that to somebody in confidence and they don't come back and say, okay, I'm there for you or whatever,
right,
it hits me really hard. And so that's what really hit me was Sam kind of just shrugged it off, and
Bucky is, I mean, they kind of set this groundwork in the first episode. But Bucky's like alone, right? I mean, other than to go back to Wakanda, he doesn't have anybody who has. I mean, Sam can't really understand what Bucky's gone through. He's not
106
years old or whatever, but he at least they've been through some shit together, and he knows who he is and where he's come from, right? Where Bucky has to he can't just walk up to somebody and say, hey, I'm 100 and whatever years old, and I used to belong to Hydra and was a killer. I mean, you just can't walk up to somebody and say that. So, which we saw in the first episode with him and the date, right? And so he's just trying to connect with people, and so that kind of breaks your heart that he tried to connect with. He's trying to work the program, and Sam is just like blew him off.
Sam's not there yet. I think Sam will get there, but I don't think Sam's there yet.
Right.
And examples of what you're talking about is they talked about the Lord of the Rings, and Sam made the comment of, I read The Hobbit when it came out in 1937. Right. When it first came out. And then there was, when Bucky was watching the announcement of John Walker's Captain America, the apartment's empty except for a TV. Yeah. And so he doesn't have any pictures up. He doesn't have a couch. He has nothing. He's sitting on the floor.
Yeah. And he's just existing right now.
Yeah. And so it's some really good examples. They have a continued conversation, and that there's somebody else that they need to after they have this exchange with John Walker and Battlestar, so bad, with Captain America and Battlestar, and they say that we're free agents, we can go work on our own, whatever. They go off, Bucky and Sam go off to talk about what do we know, what do we have, what can we use, and they come to the realization that they have to go see Baron Zemo. Yep. And they show Zemo at the end. Yep. As and then roll credits, and then the credits were different. I noticed we kind of got up to go put dinner away, and it came back, and the ending, the graffiti kind of stuff or whatever that they had in the previous one was different this time than it was the first time now. And so we'll wait for new rock stars to do their breakdown.
Their breakdown of everything.
But overall, I mean, some people are complaining about the series because it's not WandaVision. It's not full of Easter eggs, and it's not whatever. And you're right. This show is completely different than the last show. And if it was exactly like the last show, people would complain
about that.
And guess what? Loki is going to be off the fucking rails.
It's going to be completely different than the first two.
Yeah. Yeah. And wait till when Miss Marvel shows up, and wait until we get to What If, and wait till we get to like
engage in the story that's you're being told in front of you. People didn't like WandaVision when it first started. They were complaining about that. So complainers got to complain, and
right.
and
right.
I mean, you just whatever.
Yeah.
Move on. Enjoy what it is, and then once it's done, if you have some criticisms, like I have some criticisms that we started with, was the concept of it feels like it should be one long movie, or something bingeable. I don't really know that that's a criticism. I mean, that's how they did it. It's just different. WandaVision, and we talked about this earlier today. WandaVision was, each episode was a sitcom episode. It was in theme, it was in, but there was an underlying story, which again is a very sitcom-y thing to do. Maybe not in the 50s and 60s, but definitely like in the 80s and 90s, they started running some kind of underlying story throughout the season or half the season or whatever. So that's what that show was about. This is a spy drama, action thriller, whatever, which is very much more of a movie type theme thing. So make it more in a movie like thing. But
I just like we talked about this with after we got done with WandaVision. We finished this series on Friday, and then Sunday we sat down and watched all of it in once, and the show got even better. And I think that's what's going to happen with this one too. Is that it's going to get we're going to be able to go, okay, here's the continuous storyline, because right now we got the shot of Zemo in the prison, and I want to say it's probably Germany, but
I think so, because they showed that
the
roundabout with isn't it like the statue with the flame at the top of it or something?
But or it's Zurich or something maybe like that. Whatever. Anyways, but I feel a little bit let down's not the right word. I just like it's like
because it's not
I want to see
being
the next
wrapped
thing.
up in each, or at least some sort of conclusion.
This chapter was done. You've read this chapter of this book, and now that chapter's done, and it's a good leaving off point so you can go do dinner and go to bed and whatever. And then the next week we'll open the next chapter, and it'll be starting Baron Zemo sitting in the prison. And Bucky walks into the room, and stuff. So
we need to learn how to watch
TV again.
Week to week TV again.
It's bullshit. All right, well, that's our thoughts on our reaction to episode 2 of the Falcon and Winter Soldier, called the Star Spangled Man.
With a plan.
The band playing Star Spangled Band at the.
So bad.
It's so bad, but it's so good. I love competitive band stuff, like especially with the southern colleges with the drum lines and stuff like that. I just love it. It's so cool. So that's our reaction to this episode. Let us know what you thought of it. Please be nice in the comments. Like we said, we're coming at from what the story's being told to us, so we don't know every little detail. We are not new rock stars or heavy spoilers, so sorry. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notification to follow us on all the social media stuff, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Links are in the description down below. And until next time, cult members, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.